Welcome back to the podcast, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Beyond Church Walls. I wanted to start today with something my wife did that really shows how different we truly are. She went to buy a cake for my daughter's birthday, and she saw some cookies that she thought looked really, really good. And so she decided to pick up a few. Somehow she made it all the way home with this bag of cookies, completely untouched. She ate lunch and casually tried one later. And by that point, yeah, I'd already had two. You see, when it comes to cookies, cake, candy, ice cream, most really sweet foods, I don't believe in like these huge gaps between possessing and enjoying. I believe in immediate fulfillment. If it's in the house, I'm not stopping until it's completely gone. My wife, on the other hand, she can buy something, eat a few, and actually do something crazy. Just put the rest away for a future time. And I usually get the lecture the next morning when she sees I've demolished the whole thing overnight and she sees wrappers around the house. And she usually says something like, "Why can't you just eat a couple and save the rest?" Anytime we discuss eating right, she instantly goes to this moderation speech. If you could just moderate, if you could just slow down on what you eat, everything would be fine. And so for her, she's all about moderation. For me, I'm like, no, we have to get it completely out of the house. She doesn't understand me, and I'll be real with you. I do not understand her because we handle that space between wanting and enjoying completely different. Last week, we looked at the prophet Elisha, how he left his plow and stepped into that uncertain space between who he was and who God was calling him to become. And so I referred to that space as the gap. And today we're going to go deeper into that thought because the way we handle the space between wanting something and actually receiving it reveals more about us than we would really like to admit. That's what we're unpacking in today's episode. Let's get into it. Welcome to Beyond Church Walls. I am your host, Brad Crow. Around here, we discuss various topics from a biblical perspective and the perspective of Christ followers. Thank you for joining today, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. So what exactly is the gap? And so the gap to me is this space between where you are right now and where you hope to be. Or in the case of Elisha, where he was and what God was calling him to become. So it's the in-between season, the waiting room of life, that long stretch after you've prayed, after you've taken a step of faith, or after life has changed. But the full breakthrough, the answer, or the next chapter hasn't fully arrived yet. I like to think we are defined by our best intentions. The version of ourselves we show at church or when things are going really, really well. But our true character is usually revealed in this gap. Maybe you're praying for physical healing, direction for your future, or maybe you just feel stuck. And so you're praying to get out of this place where you just feel stuck. Or maybe like Elisha, you've left something behind, an old season, an old identity, or an old way of life, and now you're in this uncertain middle ground. These gaps are uncomfortable because they expose what's really in our hearts. When the excitement fades and the waiting drags on, the question is, do we stay faithful? Do we grow bitter? Do we trust God, or do we try to force open doors that he hasn't opened yet? This is exactly what happened with Elisha. He left his plow and his oxen behind, but he didn't instantly become a powerful prophet. He stepped into a long, ordinary gap season of serving, waiting, and learning. Proverbs 25, verse 28 says, "Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control." When you and I have no gap, when we demand everything immediately, we become defenseless against frustration, doubt, and fear. But when we're forced to wait, the gap becomes a mirror. It shows us who we really are. I first felt called to preach when I was 18 years old, and I am 42 now. I'll be 43 in just a few months. That means the last 24 years have often felt like one big gap season. It has been full of uncertainty, doors opening, doors closing, moments I thought I understood God's plan, and many seasons where I really had no clue what God was wanting for me or what was next. Waiting seasons have a way of exposing things in us we didn't even realize were there. Impatience, doubt, comparison, But here's the encouraging part. The gap doesn't just expose us, it also helps form us. The gap is where growth can happen. It's tempting to see every waiting season as negative, an inconvenience, a delay, a sign that something is wrong. But the truth is, the gap is where spiritual formation can happen. It's where patience is built, self-control is trained, and obedience is forged. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23 lists the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Fruit doesn't appear instantly. It requires time, seasons, weather, and the right conditions. You and I cannot develop patience if we never have to wait. We cannot grow self-control if every desire is instantly gratified. When God makes us wait, He's not punishing us or giving us the silent treatment. He's teaching us to anchor our security in Him instead of our circumstances. You see, culture tries to eliminate the gap. The reason this feels so difficult for you and I is because our entire culture is designed to remove every gap from our lives. We live in a world of instant everything. I love Walmart grocery delivery. I can place an order, and within a few hours, I can have an entire order of groceries for the next week or two sitting at my doorstep. All I have to do is bring them inside and put them up. YouTube will autoplay the next video before I can even process the last one. I can't tell you how many times I've fallen asleep and I wake up in the middle of the night and YouTube is still playing, just auto-playing video after video after video. If I click on a website and it takes more than 3 seconds or maybe even 2 seconds to load, I start getting really frustrated and really annoyed. My vehicle is a 2011, and when I get in it and I start it and I throw it in reverse, it's still loading the screen in the middle because it's so old that I have to wait on the backup camera to process and get going because I put it in reverse too quickly. I'm in a go, go, go world. I don't like waiting on things. You see, we've been trained to believe that speed equals success and waiting equals failure. And honestly, we get irritated waiting on a microwave for a minute and a half. We stand there staring at the timer like we're serving some prison sentence or something. And that mindset has slowly crept into our spiritual lives too. We don't want to wait on God's timing anymore. We want immediate answers, immediate breakthrough, and immediate clarity. We cannot eliminate the gap and still grow deep roots. When we bought our house, there were 3 Bradford pear trees in the backyard, and one of them already had a massive limb split and crashed through part of the fence. Since then, I've had a couple of them removed because honestly, they're just not great trees. One of the reasons people loved Bradford pear trees at one time was because they would grow super fast. So you could plant one in an empty yard, and within just a few years, you could have a full looking tree. The problem is that rapid growth would often produce weak, brittle wood that could not support itself long term. So they looked impressive quickly, but they would not endure storms very well. But an oak tree is totally different. An oak spends decades growing slowly, weathering storms and driving its roots deep into the ground. It takes longer, but eventually it becomes strong, stable, and nearly unshakable. Spiritually, a lot of us want Bradford pear growth with oak tree strength. We want depth without delay. We want maturity without process. And let me tell you, we want strong faith without long seasons of waiting. Trust me, I know, I get it. Deep roots are formed slowly in the waiting seasons of life. Our culture is excellent at producing Bradford pear Christians. These are people who look impressive quickly, but struggle when storms come. James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4 gives us the counter-cultural truth. Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. And honestly,
Elisha's story is a perfect example of oak tree faith. When Elijah threw his cloak over him, Elisha didn't instantly become a miracle-working prophet. He walked away from his oxen and his field and stepped into years of obscurity. For a long time, his main job was simply pouring water on the hands of Elijah. He was serving, he was watching, learning, and waiting. Before Elisha ever carried power publicly, he carried responsibility privately. He stayed present in the in-between season without constantly trying to rush out of it. And because he didn't fight the gap, his roots grew deep enough to carry the double portion anointing that came later. God doesn't waste the waiting. Think about Moses in the desert for 40 years, Joseph in prison, Paul in Arabia. The deeper the foundation, the taller the building can stand. So here's the question I want to leave you with today. What are you doing with your current gap? If you're in a waiting season right now, maybe you feel stuck. You're not sure what the next step is. Maybe you just feel like things haven't developed as quickly as you thought they would develop. I would encourage you today, don't rush it or run from it, because who you become in the gap will determine what you can carry after it. What you carry publicly is shaped by who you became privately. The training that you do in quiet is what prepares you for what's coming. So trust the process. Let the Holy Spirit develop patience and self-control in you. Deep roots take time. It's just that simple. And I think sometimes we just need to hear that God hasn't forgotten about us. He hasn't thrown us off to the side. He's building us. He's establishing roots within us. Thank you once again for tuning into the podcast. If you could take a moment to like this episode and share the podcast with someone that you think would enjoy this type of content. The podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and I will see you back here next week for another episode. Thank you so much.